Every successful person got there by going through tough times. Success is a hard-ass teacher who likes to knock you around along that journey. You know, it takes real guts to not give up and keep going. We'll hear stories about failures and how these leaders flip the script to create success. I'm John Schultz. Join me and let's discover how success is never really overnight. So welcome to the John Schultz podcast. We're very excited to be here today. We have Bob Burg. I shouldn't have to introduce him because he's so popular, but I'm going to anyway. He's the best-selling author of the Go Giver series and a keynote speaker. The Go Giver series is an unbelievable series of help in business and life. It was rated number 10 on Inc. magazine's list of most motivational books ever written. That's not an easy task. And on HubSpot, he was 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. He's the CEO and co-founder of Go Giver International Network. He's in the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame. And what I like most about him, he's an unapologetic animal fanatic, and so am I, and serves on the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption and the clinic in Jupiter, Florida. And he was named one of 30 most influential leaders by American Management Association. So Bob, welcome and thank you for doing this.
My absolute pleasure. It's great to be with you.
Okay, so you've had a very successful career. So I'd like to bring us back a little bit to when you're in your earlier days. And my first question would be like, what was your first job out of college when you first got going?
Yeah, I began as a broadcaster, first in radio doing sports, and then in television news. I landed a job at a very, very small ABC network affiliate in the mid-US. Really, I wasn't very good at it, and it wasn't long before I was not in broadcasting anymore. And I like to say graduated into sales. And I really didn't do very well there for the first few months because I knew nothing about sales. I had no formal training, and the company where I was working apparently didn't either, because if they did, they certainly didn't give any of it to me. I was kind of left out there on my own, and I floundered for the first few months. I then was in a bookstore, came across a couple of books on selling, which, doesn't sound like a big deal right now, but this was 40 years ago. And back then, unless you were in that business, you didn't really know about those kinds of things. So when I saw these two books, one by Zig Ziglar, one by Tom Hopkins, two of the icons of sales, it gave me hope that, wow, there's actually a way to sell. It's not just knock on doors or make phone calls, try to get an appointment, go in there and blah, 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 talk about your product or certain. That's not all it is. That's not how it's done. There's a methodology, a system. And within a few weeks of really reading and studying and going through it and doing everything, a few weeks later, my sales are going through the roof. And, this was very encouraging to me because what it said is if you have a system, and you don't have to invent your own, if you can learn a system, and I define a system as simply the process of predictably achieving a goal based on a logical and specific set of how-to principles, the key being predictability. So, if it's been proven that by doing A, you'll get the desired results of B, then that all you need to do is A and continue to do A and continue to do A, no matter how long it takes. And sometimes it happens and sometimes it takes a while. But If you're willing to do that, okay, you're going to achieve the kind of success you're looking to achieve. And so, fortunately, it was something that in a short time in the sales process, I was able to kind of get things together. Now, I went through some ups and downs as well, but eventually it would lead me to start to teach others how to sell. And that's when really my speaking career began, which I've been doing now for a little bit over 30 years. And the success there did not happen quickly.
Well, listen, books, now podcasts. There's so much amazing way to get information today. And look behind you. Obviously, you love books. But I love how that was how it spurred you into action, right? Information and then applying it is so important. But I want to ask you something, because I know things are about systems, because I'm a very systematic oriented person too when it comes to business development and goals. But where does belief play in this for you? Because at the end of the day, I hate the word sale or sales. To me, it's like a belief in something. And what's your thoughts on that?
Well, first, let's go there because I think it's very important. Okay. If you don't like the word sales, I believe you're going to have trouble selling. And now maybe not you, but most people. Okay.
Yep.
Now, I don't think it's that people don't like sales. I think it's they don't like what they think sales is.
The mindset.
If you believe that sales or selling is about trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, which by the way is not selling, that's called being a con artist.
Yes.
But if you think that's selling, of course you're not going to want to do something like that. But since you really know you are in sales, there's going to be an incongruence there. There's going to be a cognitive dissonance that's going to really hurt. Okay. And keep you from being able to serve others and produce, which is what selling is. Now, I would define selling as simply discovering what the other person does need, want, or desire and help them to get it.
Right.
Okay. Now, when we talk about talk about belief, very, very important. Now, I have what I call a 3-step success formula, if you will, that's surrounded by 2 concepts. Okay. The first concept is desire. It's knowing what it is you want to do. That's your purpose. It's your mission. It's what you're looking to accomplish. That's your desire. Okay. It begins with that.
Yep.
Now, step 1 in the process is discover the system, find out how to do it, right? Because you can have a great desire. You can have Jim Rohn used to say, you can have the motivation, but if you don't have the information, it's going to be very difficult.
100%.
Okay. So you have the desire. Now seek out and find the system. Okay. The second is apply the information immediately, right? Because only information when it's applied does it become wisdom. Okay. 3 is be persistent, right? You've got to outlast the no's, understanding that no is, a necessary part of getting to where you want. My friends, Andrea Waltz and Richard Fenton wrote a wonderful business parable many years ago. Actually, it came out soon after The Go-Giver. It's called Go for No. And the premise is no is the destination. I mean, yes is the destination. No is how you get there. Right. So you've got desire, which it starts with. Then you've got number 1, seek out and find the information, follow the system. 2, apply the information immediately. 3, be persistent, outlast the no's. Now the ending concept is belief. You've got to have that belief that what you're doing is worthwhile. What you're doing is bringing immense value to others. You've got to believe that you are making a difference, helping the world as you do it. And you've got to believe in yourself that you're worthy of accomplishing this. So belief has a ton in what you're doing. But yes, you've got to believe in the product or service. You've got to believe that it's adding value to the lives of others.
And so for me, it's me believing I'm actually giving something to someone that actually can help them. And we're going to talk about the Go-Giver series.
Absolutely.
Because obviously that was the book that gave the parable, was just awesome. But you had a book before that, right? It was Endless Referrals. So what was the inspiration behind that? That was obviously your first book, and it did exceptionally well.
Thank you.
And give me a little bit of the backstory.
So Endless Referrals was a book. It was a how-to book that I wrote. It came out in the 90s, I think 1994. And it was for entrepreneurs and salespeople who knew they had a great product or service. They knew it brought immense value to others, but they didn't necessarily feel comfortable going out into their local community and building the kind of relationships that would cause people to want to do business with them directly and or refer them to others. It was based on a premise that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And so Endless Referrals was the system regarding how to create those kinds of relationships.
And what did you go through writing this book? It's your first book. I mean, I know people that write books, and obviously you've written a lot of them. I hear it's grueling. And like, so what was your mindset to get through to actually write a book, get through it? What ups and downs did you go through? Was it as easy as, the success it became? Maybe there's some stories there to show people, part of your thing is persistence and not taking no for an answer, but sometimes you have to do that to yourself, right? You got to get yourself to be the client.
Yeah, well, there's a number of aspects to writing the book. There's the writing, there's getting the publisher, and there's marketing the book and selling the book. So there's a bunch of aspects. To me, the least pleasant is the writing of the book. Some people love writing books. John David Mann, my co-author of the Go-Giver series, he loves to write. He's a writing machine. I like, and I didn't make this up, but I don't know who said it first, or I would credit them, but I don't like writing books. I like having written books.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so I'm glad when the process is over.
And how was the sale? Like, did you have any hurdles getting through that first, because when it's your first book, it's not like you're a known entity. What do you have any issues selling that first book? Like, how did it go?
In terms of a publisher, I got very, very fortunate because
Okay.
I was at a National Speakers Association meeting. I'd been in the business of speaking about 4, maybe 5 years. And I'd done okay. I was building up the business. I certainly was not an overnight success. I was still in the growing phase, but I was talking to a couple of veteran speakers who said, Burg, you really should write a book on the topic of, referrals and so forth. I said, well, I really don't want to. I've got these, I had no desire to write a book. I had this at the time, cassette tape programs. That's how long ago this was, that I used to market from stage when I would speak, and things were going pretty well. And they said, well, you really might want to consider doing it because it's going to position you better. It's going to make it easier to sell your engagements. You're going to get higher fees. You're going to get, everything.
Yeah, it's the brand. Yeah.
And so, one of them, his name is Randy Pennington, very successful speaker and great guy. He said, let me introduce you to my agent. I mean, these are just some of the nicest people who just kind of took me under their wing and did that. And he loved the idea, the agent, and it took him about 3 publishers to find, our publisher for that. So that part was actually, easy back then. For me, there wasn't much of an advance. I certainly was, and it didn't matter. I didn't care.
Right.
Really, I thought of the book as something that I was going to utilize as a positioning tool and, do my best to sell it. But at the same time, I wasn't attached to any kind of, and so yeah, I mean, so that's how that one happened. Now, interestingly enough, the Go-Giver, which I would write
before you go on the Go-Giver, for the audience, give them a brief sort of summary of what the Go-Giver series is about, so they can hear that first, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So the Go-Giver is a series of 3 parables, 4 books in all. 3 of them are parables. And it's co-authored with John David Mann, who again is a fantastic, he's really the lead writer and storyteller, and it's really about understanding that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well, and not for any kind of woo-woo, way out there, magical, mystical reasons. Just give and get. No, nothing like that at all. It's actually very practical. It's very logical. It's rational. You think about it. When you're that person who can take your focus off yourself and place it on others, on serving others, on discovering their needs, wants, and desires, being focused on helping them work through and solve their challenges, on focusing on helping bring them closer to happiness, well, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to see you succeed. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They definitely want to tell others about you. So when we do that from an authentic base and really do want to create value for others, for the marketplace, well, that's when we open up the doors to being able to receive in great abundance.
So you went from the referral book to this Go-Giver series. How long in between was that?
Well, that was 12, 13 years, I guess, 14 years. And yeah, I'd had a couple, couple other books before then, before we wrote this one. The interesting thing is this book, The Go-Giver, which has sold itself has sold well over 1 million copies. Took us 25 publishers to get to or 24 to get to the 25th one.
All right, so tell that story, because that to me, they say Rocky, it took him 100 companies to take his script right before it, because he wanted to play the movie himself. Like, how did that go? Why were you getting pushback on something like this?
Well, so we had a great agent. This was another agent we were using for this, and they're wonderful. And they brought it to all the New York houses. And there were various reasons. Some just didn't like the story. Some thought, well, it's great, but does the world really need another business parable? Others thought, it's good, but it's not quite what we're looking for. People had now. There were some who, when it was just I don't like it or this, well, we just took that as a no and we moved on. But when there was some good, constructive, well, we don't feel that this is the thing because of this here or that here. Now we said, okay, is that something we need to consider? We didn't let our egos get in the way. It was, let's take this information. Then it was, well, we don't really see a good marketing message that they have behind this. Well, okay, now we got to consider that, because obviously if somebody feels that way, others are going to feel that way. So we redid the marketing message. We made a couple of changes in the text that I think were better, that made an improvement. And then by the time we got to, Portfolio, which is a division of Penguin Random House, and they turned out to be such a great publishing partner. They're just fantastic. It was the right ones at the right time.
But it was 25 no's, okay?
24 no's, and then the 25th.
But instead of packing up and going home, you took every bit of what someone was saying and you kept pivoting until you finally got to where you go, right? And then it worked out.
And we would have self-published if we believed in the message enough that we would have self-published if nobody took us on. So, we could always fall back on that, but no, we were pretty determined in this.
So what made you not self-publish earlier? Like that, like what made you keep going with that route?
There are advantages and disadvantages to self-publishing. And one of the things is when you self-publish, you're taking on all aspects of the production part. Neither John nor I are publishers, so it wasn't something that we wanted to. He actually, because he was in the magazine business, and he has a couple of his other books he has self-published. He's brilliant. He'd figure it out. He's just so. But that wasn't where we wanted to go. We kind of didn't want to fiddle with that aspect of it. Yeah.
And what unforeseen problem? Okay, so now you have the book, and did it sell like right away? Like, what was the evolution of how this came about once you finally got to the point where it was published?
Yeah, interestingly enough, this is one of the few times in my life where something happened fast.
Really?
Because success has never come quickly for me. Never has. It's always taken me much longer than it has, others in similar situations. I was always that, person who, like you say, right, about the 30-year success type of, about the always seeming just to take so much longer than you wanted to take. Okay. But this took off right away. And I think that's because of all the relationships that John and I had built up with other people who, we got pre-published copies, and they really loved it, and they got it out into their network. I started doing interviews on it. Now, this book's been out for 13 years now, and I still do a couple of interviews a day on it. Okay. So this is something that's an ongoing, type of thing. It's a message that I believe in very much, and want to get out there and share. So we did what it took to get this book out there and it was a message it was the right message at the right time, I think, too.
Yeah. It's something that I think you can read every year, because it resets your brain to move forward. Because it's a grind, especially if you're in sales, right? It's a grind. I mean, every day you're trying to please and give and make someone feel something that you're trying to give them matters to them, right? And
Sure.
that can be exhausting.
Absolutely.
So I feel like your book with the stories just gets you back in a nice
Mhm.
reset. How do you think this has shaped your life, this Go Giver series? Like,
Well, yeah, it gave me much more reach to be able to communicate a message that I felt was of value. And before, the Go Giver, again, the other books that I'd written, some of them had really great success and others were clunkers. They went nowhere. But this one, this one sold pretty big. And because of that, it gave me the opportunity to have a, a public platform, if you will, in order to get the message out. So, it's been very gratifying.
and you're still out speaking and doing all sorts of personal engagements. How did COVID affect you
Yeah.
as
Well,
as an author and speaker, and how'd you get through that time?
I do less in-person speaking now than I ever did. Now, starting about 6 or 7 years ago, I'm 64 right now. And so,
Okay.
I never, and I've been speaking for over 30 years, and I never enjoyed the travel part. Okay.
Right.
I love the speaking part. I feel absolutely honored, privileged to have had the career I've had, to get to do what I've done. But I never enjoyed the speaking part. I mean, the travel part. I always
Right.
loved the speaking part. But you do what you have to do as part of what you need to. The clients weren't coming to me. The conferences, I had to go to where they were and get on a lot of planes and sleep in a lot of hotels. And so a number of years ago, I started pulling back on the number of times I'd speak. I limited it to, between 15 and 20, what I call airplane engagements, if I had to get on an airplane, right?
Yeah.
Then, of course, COVID hit and it went down to zero. And
Scary,
so,
right? I mean,
well,
especially for what you do.
it wasn't as much for me as it was for some of my colleagues
Right.
who were dependent upon being on the road,
Yeah.
and they were still young and they were still hungry. They were still, and my heart broke for them, as well as the hundreds of millions of people who've been, but yeah, I was fortunate in that way. It didn't make a huge difference with me. Did do a bunch of virtual keynotes, which I charge a lot less for that, but I'm at home and I don't have to travel and it's easier to do.
Is that still
So-
happening? Like, do you find that the business is more for that is still going to happen, or do you think that's going to change as we move forward?
It's both. Or at least that's what I found, because
Okay.
what I wanted to do after that, I kind of said, once COVID hit, I said, I'm never leaving the house again. I'm just going to do these.
Yeah.
And then I'd hear from clients and they'd say, well, we're meeting in, having them in Las Vegas or Nashville or
Right.
whatever. And I'm thinking, well, why don't you guys just have it, like everybody? Now we're kind of over the Zoom thing, right? So,
Yeah, I think that's what happened. The Zoom
So-
thing sort of got to like a certain point, and then listen, there's nothing like being around energy and people, and as much as the travel stinks, once you're there, you're usually happy that you did it. But I agree.
I've cut it down now to 12 a year. So I figure I'll do one a month, just to kind of keep my hand in it and, not be totally in an ivory tower. Right. And do that. So I'm doing probably over the next few years, I'll do less and less. I also have a whole team of certified Go Giver speakers. So we
Good.
kind of refer them
You can
out.
scale yourself, which is great.
And we have a Go Giver online community membership, right? So we have called the Go Giver community. And so we're doing that. So my business partner, Kathy Tajanel, who's absolutely brilliant, she has really helped set this up. So, I'm not as dependent on having to go out on the road or do the thing, but I just assume I'd love to do. And I am also doing the internet ones, the virtual keynotes.
Which is good.
It's just, I love them, but just not as much as I would have liked. I would have liked to do all virtual and none on the road.
I know. Listen,
It is what it is, right?
Everyone got into a different habit, right? We got to kick the habit of not going out. So here you are. I mean, ultra successful. Obviously, you had your issues getting there, but what brings you back every day? Like, what's the core component on why you're still doing this and continue to want to do this?
I still feel like I have some value to add to the world.
Okay.
And now with the Go Giver community, the online membership community, I am just totally dedicating myself to that. I mean, that is Kathy's and my real thing. I mean, we want to build this up to 1 million monthly active users and just have people online, all think of, Facebook only for Go Givers. And it's
I love
business
that.
instead of social, right? So, yeah, so that's and I love the idea, and I just to be able to introduce people to these concepts, and we see people's business just going, up and up, and we just love it. So, so I guess it goes back to this: as long as I love what I'm doing and feel I have some value to add, I'll stay in the game.
And I think you nailed it. Like, people want to be a part of a community with like-minded people that they can learn from and be mentored or be a mentee. And I think what you're doing is tremendous.
Thank you.
I think life's been going that way more anyway, with the whole social media and sort of how we communicate. So a question to you, which I think is an important one for moving forward, being that, sales to me is what drives business. We have this whole younger, population now getting into business. What advice would you give to them? They're used to text, DMs, we're losing the human connection in my mind, as far as, what, giving and selling or whatever you want to call it is. What would you say to the younger people in the industry trying to grow their careers, knowing what your parable is and what you teach?
Well, it's a great question, and the answer is actually a pretty simple one, and that is never forget, as much as technology becomes ever more prevalent, and it will continue to be, okay, it's still all about the human connection. You can utilize technology to make that human connection stronger, but it's never about the technology. It's never about the technology. People do not do business with and refer business to those computers they know, like, and trust, or smartphones they know, like, and trust. Okay. They do business with and they refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And it's always going to be that way. The more technology is omnipresent, the more high touch is going to be what separates, the really successful people from the others.
No, and I agree. And it's funny because, like, even you, right? Like, you had so many years of having to travel and grind through it. Even you right now with the technology, right? We're all trying to figure out how to do it in a different way and scale ourselves. But I believe that my best relationships were people that it wasn't even the meeting. It was like after the meeting where I learned about their family, or I got to know them in a different way, where actually that you build that trust, and you figure out how you can actually give to someone other than what you're trying to sell them, right? From connecting them, but you can't learn that without being together. So I'm hoping that's where listen, we're talking everything's hybrid, right? It's hybrid going to the office, it's hybrid work world. I'm hoping that the younger generation realizes that, like, getting out and meeting people in person is just so paramount, and that's what you teach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So which one out of the series would you say is your favorite Go Giver? Do you have a favorite child?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. It's the fourth, it's the third parable, the fourth book in the series. It's called The Go Giver Influencer, and it's really all about people skills.
Okay.
We focus it around genuine influence, which is basically the ability to attain the results you want while helping the other person feel genuinely good about themselves, about the situation, and about you. It's the ultimate in both parties coming away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. It's moving from it's moving from compromise, which is limiting, to collaboration, in which 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah, compromise, you got to do it, but, like, that's not a great word.
At times you do, but it's never the first option we want people to go for.
No, I love the collaboration. Well, I'm going to read that one. Is it have any brain science in there? Because like it's amazing how much, when you actually start learning about the brain, how humans interact and how important it is to understand that, right? From listening to mirroring. Do you get into any of that?
Not so much the mirroring or, things like that, but yeah, we definitely get into why people act the way they do. You know, we look at human
Which
nature.
is so
and we look at
important. And maybe
But we
even
do
learn
it,
a
you
little
know,
bit about yourself that way too, right? Because I think learning about yourself is paramount to you being able to
so
work with other
very
people,
important.
right?
Absolutely. You know, and I think if there's one piece of advice I'd give to the young kids, aside from understanding it's all about relationships, it's learn about human nature. Really understand human nature, what motivates people, what causes people to do the things they do. And part of that is understanding yourself and why you do the things you do, and why.
Well, because we're projecting all of our stuff out to the world, right? Like we don't even realize sometimes, you know, it's like I always say, like two people could be looking down the street and we both are seeing entirely different things, right? So you got to realize, like, no one's thinking like you are. So you got to really listen.
We talk about that in the book too.
So I'm looking forward to that. So where can people find you? So you got the bobburg.com. Like where's the best?
Burg.com, burg.com, where they can find me, and they can also go, if they'd like to, the Go Giver Community. So not the Go Giver, but the Go Giver Community.com to check out the community if they'd like.
Well, I think that everyone should. I know I do. I just actually signed up for the newsletter today. I look forward to reading the Go Giver Influencer. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time. What you're doing is tremendous. You're adding so much value to people throughout the world, and you've done it for years. And I'm just glad I was able to meet you and talk to you for this few minutes.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.